Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, Alaska's pipeline to the future, delivering oil today, sustaining operations for tomorrow, committed to safety, operating the 800-mile Trans-Alaska Pipeline since 1977.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberly Hepner, and today is April 9th, 2014. When we're not on air, you can always check out our information by going to www.arh.noaa.gov. And as always, you can call our weather information line if you'd like to get your information via the phone line, 1-800-472-0391. And as always, you can always look us up on Facebook and Twitter, and we're also on YouTube. All right, now in just a moment, we're going to be talking about the weather all across the state, including your public aviation and marine forecasts. Now on to the satellites, looking out towards the west first, as there's a low pressure system that we're keeping an eye on across the western part of the Aleutians. I'll put this into motion and you can see it spinning across the western part of the Aleutians here. I'm going to put that into motion one more time. You can see that there's a lot of clouds that are streaming up across into the Bering and back over the backside of this low pressure system. Now looking closer to home, there's an area that is cleared out actually across most of the mainland, seeing clear skies. The whitish areas are just cooler temperatures showing up on the satellite. And then the clearing skies have occurred all the way out into the eastern parts of the Bering, and then we have these clouds. The lowest clouds aren't being picked up on this picture here, but there's low clouds that are streaming all across the Bering, through the Bering Strait, and all along the northwestern coastal areas. Across the Gulf of Alaska, mostly clear skies have pushed through, and we have a front that's across the eastern part of the North Pacific, and this is pushing a lot of moisture up into the southeastern areas back into towards the Panhandle. So a lot of moisture falling in the form of precipitation, of rain and snow, as we'll get to in just a moment when we look at your charts. But I'll put that into motion one more time, and you can see how those clouds are clearing right across the Gulf of Alaska. Now on to one more loop before you can see this just lifting and clearing all across the southern parts of the state here. So looking at clear skies all across the state, the main focus across the southeast is this low pressure system that made its way inland earlier today. It's dragging a cold front with it, and there's rain showers mainly associated with this front until you get to the further north and the higher elevations and just inland where there's some snow falling along the boundary. And there is snow across the south or the eastern part of the Alaska Range this afternoon, and also Yakutat area. So this is mainly along on the back side of this system. High pressure is dominating across the north and northwestern coast, brings some very cold air from the Arctic across the all the way back through the Seward Peninsula and down through the southwest. Clearing skies here with some showers dissipating around a low pressure system that's just sitting to the southwest of the Alaska Peninsula. As we look further to the west across the Bering, here's a cloud streaming ahead of the front that's situated across the eastern and central parts of the Aleutians. So this occlusion is all the way wrapped back through the western part of the Aleutians. Rain with warmer temperatures on the east side of this front, and cooler temperatures along the north has brought a rain and snow mix just to the north of the low. This low pressure system is a 980, and we'll see this continue to spin in place, just continuing to bring this moisture in the form of rain along the Aleutian area and changing over to snow as you head north into the Bering. Across the northwest, a small disturbance is approaching the northwest, and this will bring a chance for some light snow showers during the overnight time frame, and possible chances for fog to develop just off the coast, mainly of the western areas, as temperatures begin to cool and get closer towards their dew point temperatures. Now, across the Gulf of Alaska and the mainland, we'll see mainly clearing skies, and offshore flow will increase tonight. This pressure gradient just along the eastern part of the the Alaska Range and along the coast will increase the offshore flow here, so we might see some gusty conditions through the Thompson Pass area. Now, the low pressure system across the southeast will bring some wraparound moisture that might make it into parts of the eastern Alaska Range. And the front is going to be staying right along the southeast, another round of low pressure, but this one will mainly be dissipating as the surface low that brought the front in earlier today will be dissipating. So the showers will be a little bit lighter as we head into the overnight hours, changing over to a rain and snow mix at the lower elevations with snow at the higher elevations. As we head into your day on Thursday, expect rain to continue as another cold front is pushed through the southeastern parts of the Gulf. So around the Dixon entrance mainly, we'll see the heaviest rain with some lighter shower activity across the inner channels. And as you head further north, we'll see some light snow in the higher elevations once again. Now, across much of the state, we'll see another day of clearing skies and temperatures not getting as warm as we, some of us would like, because we have this cold air that's tapping into the Arctic and just seeping through the Brooks Range tomorrow. So that's going to keep things cool along the northern coast, back through the northwest, and even down through much of the southwest tomorrow. Now, snow is going to continue to be likely just off the northwestern areas for your day on Thursday, and then the front across the Aleutian chain is going to continue to push north into the Bering. Mainly the precipitation is going to be confined along the frontal boundary that'll be moving into the Pribilof area, and they'll see a possible mix of rain and snow and then changing over possibly to all rain, but mainly light as we head into Thursday afternoon. Wraparound moisture will make it through the western and central part of the Aleutians with this system. And then as we head into your day on Friday, not too much change. This low pressure is going to be reinforced by another low pressure that's going to be coming up from the North Pacific. The rain here will become a little bit more increased on Friday across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians, and then across the Pribilof area, we'll continue to see a mix of rain and snow chances for Friday. Also, along this frontal boundary, the pressure gradient will increase ahead of this low pressure system. So we might see the winds picking up and a little bit more gusty across the Alaska Peninsula and the Bristol Bay area back towards the central Aleutians. Across the mainland, mainly benign conditions across the state, lighter winds, high pressure remains in control. As it pushes off into the Canadian area, we'll see some light snow showers along the eastern Beaufort Sea, and then high pressure will dominate, and we'll have offshore flow across much of the south central areas, and across the southeast we'll see a drying out along after a few days of rain. Possible chances to see another ½ inch to an inch of rain before it comes to an end on your Friday. Now let's look at your temperatures for today. They reached up into the upper 30s to lower 40s, 41 reported at Sitka and Annette this afternoon. Across the Gulf coastal areas, we saw mainly in the mid 30s, and then as you went north and west of the Alaska Range, temperatures quickly dropped into the teens and single digits along the northern Arctic areas. So temperatures dropping or only reaching into they actually climbed up to -12 at Barrow today, and then single digits all along through the Seward Peninsula, where you had temperatures right around 10 degrees until you got towards the southwest. Southwest saw mainly temperatures in the mid-20s, Alaska Peninsula a little bit warmer out across the waters, and the eastern parts of the Bering in the mid-30s to lower 40s, and temperatures moderate all the way through the Aleutian chain in the mid to upper 30s mainly. And then as we look at your temperatures into tonight, not much of a diurnal change across the central and western Aleutians in the 30s. And then across the southwestern areas, expect temperatures to dip down into the lower teens to single digits. And as you look across the northern areas, here's that cold air mass I said would be seeping down. So many locations will drop into the -20 to -30 degree range. Across the eastern areas of the state, expect temperatures near zero, and as you get towards the coast, temperatures will climb slowly, and coastal locations will see temperatures dropping into the lower 20s to lower 30s. Across the southeast, not much diurnal change here. Temperatures will mainly be in the low to mid 30s. And then as we head in your day tomorrow, looking at temperatures in the 40s all across the coastal locations, in the teens across the interior sections, single digits and below across the Arctic coast and the Beaufort Sea coast, and then down across the southwest tomorrow in the mid 30s to near 40 degrees across much of the chain. And let's take a look at your flying weather. Mostly MVFR conditions across the Bering, with IFR possible in the eastern parts of the Aleutians and western Aleutians. And then of course the MVFR and IFR conditions across parts of the southeast and along the northwestern coast. Looking at your conditions in more depth for your passes, and Anatuvik Pass will be VFR tomorrow, and Adigan will also be a VFR. VFR for Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, and Rainy Pass will also be VFR. Windy Pass will be VFR. And then looking at Isabel, we'll see MVFR conditions improve to VFR later in the day, and Tanita Pass will stay VFR. Portage will be VFR, and MVFR to VFR for Chilkoot and White Pass. And the freezing levels here, hugging the coastline for tomorrow morning towards the central parts of the Bering, and then 2,000 to 6,000 feet as you get towards the central Aleutians and down towards the southern part of the Gulf of Alaska, 6,000 feet. Now your icing for tomorrow will be below 12,000 feet, above roughly 4,000 feet across the southeast, and then improve in the afternoon, and across the Bering, mainly below 12,000 feet across the western and central part of the Aleutians. Looking at your jet stream, a very strong westerly flow just to the south of the Aleutians and the Gulf of Alaska, with 100 to 80 to 100 knot jet just south of the Alaska Peninsula. Looking at your tomorrow 9,000 foot winds, you have a circulation across a low pressure in the western Aleutians, with the strongest winds mainly on the western side of this between 30 and 40 knots, and then a westerly flow across much of the state between 50 and 30 knots, and a little bit stronger flow on the southeast between 15 and 30 knots towards the Dixon entrance. Looking at your flow at 3,000 feet, you have a westerly flow across the state, offshore flow across the coastal areas, and then westerly flow at 35 knots across the southeast, and same circulation as this is a stacked system out in the west, and the strongest winds are going to be on the backside of the slow system. All right, and here's tomorrow's turbulence, mainly around the low pressure system in the west and across the parts of the southeast. We'll be back in just a moment with your marine forecast.
At the Geophysical Institute, scientists monitor earthquake data from several hundred seismic sensing stations across Alaska. When a seismic disturbance occurs, this data is instantly transmitted to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's West Coast and Alaska Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. Scientists on 24-hour call quickly analyze that data, along with data from their own network of sensors, and decide whether or not they should issue a tsunami warning.
When we see a large earthquake has occurred and it's occurred near the coast, we'll issue a warning to those who could be affected by the wave within a certain amount of time. And then we'll monitor the wave to see if it really was dangerous or not, and if it was dangerous, then we'll expand the warning to all the people that it may be dangerous for.
You can improve warning systems. You can do that a number of ways. One of the most obvious is by providing better hardware to measure earthquakes more accurately, but also to measure directly the tsunami itself.
As part of the DART project, deep ocean assessment and reporting of tsunamis, NOAA has developed a system of 6 ocean buoys which help measure a potential tsunami. Attached to the buoys are pressure sensors on the ocean bottom that can detect tsunamis passing overhead. The sensors instantly beam the data via satellite to NOAA's tsunami warning centers in Palmer and Ewa Beach, Hawaii.
I work with the state seismologist and other seismologists in our Alaska Earthquake Information Center to generate the hypothetical earthquake scenarios.
These what-if scenarios are used to produce very practical products. One of them is called an inundation map.
Inundation maps are critical to defining evacuation zones and routes so that coastal communities can respond quickly in the event of a tsunami. These deceptively simple maps show the highest point of flooding by a potential tsunami, but a mind-numbing amount of data is needed to generate them. It is only with the advent of the supercomputer that researchers finally had the tool they needed to take tsunami research to the next level. In the mid-1990s, Alaska Sea Grant funded a research project by University of Alaska Fairbanks scientists Zygmunt Kowalik and Elena Suleimani. They worked with the Arctic Region Supercomputing Center at UAF to create a model of an event that occurred over 120 years ago.
The first effort to test a tsunami model was to model the 1883 wave that was generated by the eruption of St. Augustine volcano, that is an island volcano in Cook Inlet.
When the volcano erupted, part of the mountain crashed into the sea and generated a wave that raced across Cook Inlet and partially flooded the village of English Bay. A logbook kept by the Alaska Commercial Company trading post at English Bay documents the sudden inundation.
On this morning at 8:15 o'clock, 4 tidal waves flowed with a westerly current, one following the other at the rate of 30 miles per hour, the sea rising 20 feet above the usual level.
Kowalik and Suleimani's analysis of that event resulted in a computer model that has been refined and is now used to create inundation maps for Alaska coastal towns. This supercomputer animation shows how several tsunamis inundated the U.S. Navy base in Kodiak after the 1964 earthquake. The red area indicates maximum inundation. Projections like this are used to create inundation maps.
The goal of our work in inundation mapping is to make coastal Alaska a safer place to live. And I think our major goal is to save lives.
Some shrewd detective work helped the researchers refine their computer model. Geologist and tsunami expert Dr. Gary Carver collected geological clues and considered eyewitness accounts to work up an accurate picture of what actually happened when the tsunamis hit Kodiak in 1964.
In this area, the wave came up this bay, and we have here some of the very best information concerning how large the 1964 wave was. This is also an area where we modeled the wave as a way of calibrating the modeling exercise. And what we found is that in this particular case, the modeled wave departed somewhat from what we know to be the actual area that the wave covered. But in reality, we know from the sand deposits and from the eyewitness accounts that the wave ran back into the trees, into the vicinity of those many houses and buildings back there. And so here's a place where we were able to use the geologic evidence and the historic evidence to calibrate the model.
If we get a big tsunami in this community, similar to what the University of Alaska Fairbanks researchers have told us, this waterfront will be gone. Our goal is to protect community residents and do the best we can to protect infrastructure. And by knowing where the wave may come, based on the information from the scientists, we've got a much better chance of preparing the community for dealing with that. But we've also tried to really educate the community that there are some instances that could cause a tsunami, and the sirens may not go off because we may not have gotten word that from the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer that in fact a tsunami is on its way, and that would be one that would be locally generated by a local earthquake. And what we tell people is if they have trouble standing up for 15 seconds, or the earthquake lasts for longer than 30 seconds, they should evacuate. They shouldn't wait for the siren to go off.
To help people in towns like Kodiak understand the threat and prepare for the next tsunamis, the NOAA National Weather Service runs an information program in partnership with the Alaska Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management called the Tsunami Ready Program.
Seward, Alaska was designated as the first tsunami-ready community within the state. The Alaska Division of Emergency Services and the city government got together via the fire chief and assistant city manager and worked to bring us into uniform plan for evacuation and informational distribution to all of the citizens within the area.
This is a test of the emergency siren system.
This is only a test.
It means that we can get the word out to the people. We have all of the warning systems in place. We receive the information, and we can pass that on to the people in town and be able to get them into an area of safety in case of tsunamis.
For the sourdough Alaskans who survived the ocean's fury in 1964, a real-life nightmare is burned into their memories. They know what tsunamis can do. But most of us were not here back then, when the black waves of March tore into our shores and swept away more than 100 souls. We would do well to learn from the experience of our fellow Alaskans. Because as the scientists assure us, it is not a question of if, but when the next tsunami will strike our coastline.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. On to your marine forecast. Mainly offshore flow across the eastern Gulf waters tomorrow between 15 and 20 knots. Along your inner channel is going to be variable 10 knots with seas around 2 feet, and then 3 feet towards the as you head towards the south, and then the outer water areas you'll see between 7 and 9 feet. Stronger winds on your Friday forecast, northerly flow across the area, 25 knots across the inner channels. We'll see some small craft criteria here. Seas will be 5 feet across the inner channels, and the outer waters will be between 6 and 11 feet, and highest seas as you head further south. Across the south central waters, you're going to see winds that are rather light for tomorrow, between 10 and 15 knots. Northerly flow across the Shelikof Island and Kodiak area. Seas will be 2 feet across the Cook Inlet and 2 feet across the Prince William Sound. Ice is clearing across the Cook Inlet, so that's exciting news for them today. And then the rest of the water areas will see seas between 4 and 6 feet, and stronger winds once again on Friday, mainly across the western parts of the Gulf and across the Barren Islands area. Out of the southeast, mainly around 25 knots. A northerly flow across Shelikof Strait and the Cook Inlet between 10 and 20 knots. And then Prince William Sound will once again have variable 10-knot winds, and across the northern parts of the Gulf, 15 to 20 knots out of the south and southeast. Now, as we look over your Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay area, we're going to see wind flow here out of the east and southeast, and then we'll see seas across the Bering 3 to 5 feet, and then across the Pacific around 7 feet. And then heading into your Friday forecast, south to southeasterly flow once again, stronger winds, gale criteria south of the Alaska Peninsula, 35 knots out of the southeast. Seas here will be 12 to 13 feet and 5 to 9 feet on the Bering side. Looking out towards your Aleutians, mainly a southerly flow across the eastern and central Aleutians, 20 to 25 knots, small craft criteria across the central areas, and then across the western areas, we'll see a northerly flow on the backside of that low pressure system, small craft here as well. And then we'll have 6 to 9 feet average seas across the Bering, and then 12 to 15 foot seas across the Pacific side. Heading into your Friday forecast, we'll see a northerly flow across most of the Aleutian chain. And as you go towards the Unalaska area, you'll see south to easterly flow. Winds here will be between 20 and 25 knots, small craft criteria across the central and eastern Aleutians. And then seas will be between 5 and 9 feet, except for 10 to 12 feet on the Pacific side. Looking at the western areas, looking at an east to southeasterly flow, around 20 knots, a little bit lighter winds across or north of Nunivak Island, and then ice still across most of the northern parts of the Bering, and 4 to 7 foot seas across the central parts of the Bering near the Pribilofs. And looking at your Friday forecast, still keeping an easterly component to the wind, a little bit northerly as you head towards St. Matthews Island. And then looking at the seas here will be between 7 and 11 feet, and small craft criteria across the central part of the Bering towards the western coast area. And then across the northwest and the northern areas of the coast, we'll see winds primarily out of the south and southwesterly direction at 15 knots, everything in ice all the way down towards the Kotzebue Sound. And then your Friday forecast, still light winds between 10 and 15 knots, a southerly flow mainly across the northwest, easterly flow across the Kotzebue area, and the Beaufort Sea coastal sea out of the west around 15 knots. Now recapping your forecast real quick for tonight, you're seeing possible patchy fog along the western coast, otherwise clearing skies going to remain across much of the mainland. Shower activity across the southeast and tapering off across the eastern part of the Alaska Range. The main system is going to stay out across the Aleutians through Friday, and then we'll see continued scattered showers on your Friday with mostly clear skies Thursday and Friday across the mainland, with the front approaching the Alaska Peninsula. I'm meteorologist Kimberly.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
You can tell a lot about a company by where it invests. At ConocoPhillips, we're investing in Arctic science and engineering at the University of Alaska Anchorage. And we're supporting today's students and tomorrow's engineers at UAF. In fact, today, more than 100 of our employees are University of Alaska graduates, and our future is in their hands. We happen to think that's a pretty good investment. ConocoPhillips, Alaska's oil and gas company.